After dating for 5 years, Ethan Carter finally proposed to me. But on the day of our wedding rehearsal, I was only half an hour late when I saw Ethan already exchanging wedding rings with Lily, his childhood sweetheart. Everyone was offering them their heartfelt congratulations and wishing them a happy marriage. Ethan scolded me for being immature, saying, "Lily even took time off work to rehearse for you. How could you possibly blame her?" He didn't know that last night, Lily had secretly worn my wedding dress, stood on tiptoe, and kissed the corner of his lips, whispering, "My only wish in this life is to have a wedding with you." I had clearly heard Ethan reply, "Okay." On my way to the wedding rehearsal, I had felt extremely uneasy, constantly checking my phone. I had received a message about a rare opportunity to study in Milan. Are you really going to give up such a rare chance again because of Ethan Carter? Think it through carefully. I'll hold the spot for you for just one more day. If it had been before, I would have refused without the slightest hesitation. But now, I opened the chat with Ethan. He had sent me a message last night. "Chloe, I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress, putting on the ring. I love you, Chloe, until death and beyond." Yet right now, under the clear and cold moonlight, I watched Lily rise on her toes and desperately kiss the corner of Ethan's lips. "Don't reject me, please, Ethan. I really love you. I just love you. What did I do wrong? I've loved you for so many years. My only wish was to have a wedding with you. Can't you even grant me that?" In order to make time for our wedding preparations, I had pulled several all-nighters at work. I even wondered whether I was hallucinating. Otherwise, why hadn't Ethan pushed Lily away? Why had Lily stretched out her hands so tenderly to wipe the tears sliding down his face? Ethan's eyes were filled with tenderness, as if he couldn't bear to hurt the girl standing before him. Even slightly. I stood outside the door and heard his familiar voice say, "I promise you." It felt as if I had plunged into an icy abyss. I couldn't remember how I got home, nor how I fell asleep. I only remembered lying in bed, in the darkness, silently unlocking my phone, seeing the message Ethan had sent, and only then did my tears finally start falling uncontrollably. "Sis, the road is jammed. We might be an hour late getting to the hotel." Early that morning, Ethan had sent one of his groomsmen, Jason, to pick me up. On the phone, Ethan sounded both gentle and helpless. "You didn't reply to my message last night. Did you stay up late again? I told you to take care of your health. After we get married, I'll make plenty of nourishing meals for my wife to take care of her body. After all, you're my wife. What else can I do but spoil you?" Jason even brought the breakfast that Ethan had personally prepared for me. Because of work, I often stayed up all night, designing fashion sketches, forgetting to eat, and over time I had developed stomach problems. After scolding me a few times, Ethan had helplessly resigned himself to learning how to cook, personally bringing meals to my office and waiting until I finished eating before leaving. My colleagues often envied me, saying, "With a boyfriend like that, no wonder you gave up so many promotion opportunities. His company is already listed on the stock exchange. In a few years, Chloe, you won't need to work hard like us anymore. You'll just be a rich housewife." Back then, I was shy and full of sweetness. Now, all that sweetness had turned into excruciating pain. "I'm really sorry, sis. I chose the wrong route. It's seriously jammed." Jason apologized awkwardly. "It's okay. It's just the rehearsal anyway. You and Ethan have been together for 5 years already. What's a little more waiting? Why don't you eat the breakfast Ethan prepared while we're stuck here?" He smiled awkwardly. I shook my head, pretending not to notice how he kept nervously glancing at his phone. Their plan was flawless. Jason would delay me, giving Lily enough time to put on my wedding dress and marry Ethan Carter in front of all their friends, fulfilling her dream without anyone realizing anything was wrong. They had been childhood playmates, while I, the so-called fiancé, was merely an outsider. But they forgot that, no matter how busy I was, I had personally arranged everything for the wedding. The officiant was someone I had hired myself, and now he was frantically messaging me, asking why I hadn't arrived yet. Keeping a calm face, I pushed open the car door, got out, and quietly closed it behind me. While Jason stood there frozen and helpless, I quickly hailed another taxi and took a different route to the hotel. Jason, holding the insulated food box, rushed after me trying to stop me. Sis, Ethan got up before dawn to make this breakfast for you. You really don't want it? I looked at him through the car window, forcing myself to maintain a steady voice. I don't want it anymore. Please have the bride and groom exchange rings. By the time I arrived at the hotel, the wedding rehearsal had already started. How ridiculous. No matter how busy I had been with work, I had never once given up on preparing for my own wedding. For the past 3 months, I had lost count of how many nights I stayed up planning the wedding of my dreams. Now, everything was happening exactly as I had envisioned, except the bride had changed. On stage, Ethan Carter, tall and striking, stood in his white tuxedo, just like the male lead I had pictured countless times when reading romance novels. He lowered his gaze to Lily, his eyes full of tenderness and satisfaction. Lily's cheeks were slightly flushed with excitement. Below the stage, their longtime friends and relatives were cheering. Lily finally ended up with her true love. She's finally living her dream. Oh, our silly little Lily. Ever since she was a kid, after just a sip of wine, she used to cling to Ethan and insist on marrying him. Who would have thought it would actually come true one day? They were a completely different set of parents and friends compared to when they first met me. When Ethan and I went from wearing school uniforms to wearing wedding attire together, everyone had praised us as a perfect match, a golden couple. His friends had always treated me warmly, everyone except Lily. From the very first time she met me, I could tell she disliked me. I had even once suspected that she liked Ethan. But when I voiced this to Ethan, he had only stared at me for a moment before laughing it off. Don't be silly. Lily is 5 years younger than me. She's still just a kid. At most, she's just immature. There's no way she likes me. At the time, Lily had just started high school. Compared to us, she really was just a child. Ethan had also promised me he would properly set boundaries with Lily, making sure she wouldn't stray. But now the officiant said, the groom may kiss the bride. I watched as Lily, standing there in my wedding dress, timidly rose onto her toes, looking up at Ethan with desperate hope. Her hand clutched tightly onto the hem of the gown. A young girl's heart, so sour, so bitter, so helpless. Finally, someone nudged Ethan. He sighed softly, and as tears slid down Lily's cheeks, he lifted her veil and kissed her lips. The crowd erupted into cheers. Rose petals rained down from above, creating a beautiful dreamlike scene, just like the one I had originally envisioned for myself. Miss Chloe, you're here. The officiant's surprised voice rang out suddenly. His microphone seemed faulty. Right after he spoke, a screeching sound like nails on a chalkboard echoed across the hall. In an instant, the entire atmosphere shattered. Everyone turned their heads sharply toward me, staring at me as if I were some uninvited outsider ruining their wedding. It was only then that Ethan seemed to come back to his senses. Chloe, why are you? I silently completed the unfinished half of his sentence in my heart. It's too early. According to the plan, I should have arrived half an hour later, after the rehearsal had ended. Even if I felt upset, there would have been no scene. At most, Ethan could soothe me with a few words, telling me Lily was just a child, and everything would be perfect. Lily's dream fulfilled, and our relationship unharmed. A win-win for everyone. But now, because I didn't follow their plan, there was a trace of impatience in Ethan's voice. Chloe, don't blame Lily. She specially took time off to bless our wedding. You're the one who came late. But why should I? I started walking toward the stage as Ethan continued. You were the one still pulling all-nighters for work right before the wedding. You barely checked on the preparations yourself. If it weren't for Lily taking time off to help, could the wedding have been organized so smoothly? Seeing I said nothing, Ethan's brows furrowed tightly. You're not going to start making baseless accusations again, are you? Saying Lily likes me? Chloe, let me make this clear. A filthy heart sees filth everywhere. I didn't look at him. I simply walked steadily toward the center of the hall, toward Lily, who was still basking in the dizzying happiness of it all, clutching tightly onto my wedding gown. I stopped in front of her. The entire place fell into a dead silence. Only my voice echoed coldly in the grand, empty hall. I said, "Take off the wedding dress." Lily's smile froze awkwardly on her face. She turned helplessly to look at Ethan. "Brother Ethan." Ethan stared at me in disbelief. "Chloe, have you lost your mind? Do you even know what you're saying?" Of course I knew. This wedding dress was my mother's keepsake to me. Before she passed, her only regret had been not living long enough to see me get married. I had brought the dress all the way from my hometown and painstakingly had it restored and redesigned based on her wedding photos. No one knew how many late nights I had spent alone in my studio. It was in the quiet of countless nights that I crafted this wedding dress by hand, stitching it little by little with my own longing for marriage and happiness. Ethan Carter, as the man who loved me, should have understood how much this dress meant to me. And yet, he still allowed Lily to wear it, holding a wedding ceremony that belonged only to the two of them. I suppressed the sharp needle-like pain stabbing at my heart, using every ounce of strength to keep my voice steady. This wedding dress is my personal property. If it suffers even the slightest damage, I will not let it go easily. Lily looked terrified. She tried to hide behind Ethan. Ethan's face darkened. Chloe, what exactly do you want? How strange. Hadn't I already made myself clear? I reached out, grabbing a handful of Lily's hair, yanking her backward to stop her from moving. With a hard tug, she fell to the ground, grimacing in pain. I walked over and squatted down, directly reaching for the zipper at the back of the wedding dress. Ah, you're crazy. You psycho. Ethan, help me. Lily shrieked and struggled wildly, but my movements remained steady and precise, the hands of a designer who knew exactly what she was doing. The wedding dress slipped off her body, leaving only the thin slip underneath. Chloe, have you caused enough trouble yet? Ethan grabbed my wrist forcefully, his brows deeply furrowed. He yanked me away from Lily. Neither he nor Lily cared at all about the fragile fabric of the dress in my hands. With a sharp tearing sound, the dress ripped from my grip all the way to Lily's waist. Ethan's grip tightened even more, his strength so fierce it felt like my wrist would shatter. His voice was filled with deep disappointment. Chloe, I really didn't think you were capable of doing something like this. Apologize to Lily. I fought to hold back my tears. Looking up, I realized for the first time how utterly unfamiliar Ethan's face had become. Lily reacted faster than anyone. She quickly took off the ripped dress, stuffed it into my hands, and let her tears fall. Her eyes were rimmed red, and she looked as if she had been grievously wronged. Wearing only her thin slip, she dove into Ethan's arms like a fragile butterfly, her small frame trembling with sobs. Ethan gently caressed her back, his movements as tender as if he were handling something infinitely precious. But when he looked up at me, his eyes were filled only with disappointment and disgust. I'll say it one more time, apologize to Lily. Otherwise, there's no need for this wedding to continue. I hugged the tattered wedding dress to my chest, and I couldn't help but let out a soft, almost bitter laugh. I took off the engagement ring from the ring finger of my right hand, a ring I had once cherished above all else. That ring had been chosen during a trip Ethan and I took to southern France. On a summer night by the seaside market, I had spotted a delicate little ring. Though it was only set with a rhinestone, its beauty was undeniable. But on the flight back home, the ring disappeared, no matter how hard I searched for it. I was devastated for days. Ethan had noticed. One day, while cooking in the kitchen, he suddenly called out to me, asking me to come over. Inside the belly of a huge fish he had just cut open, there was a ring, one almost identical to the one I had lost, except now the rhinestone had been replaced by a real diamond. Standing at the kitchen doorway, I had stared blankly at the ring, thinking how incredible it was. After all, southern France was so far away. Before I could make sense of it, I looked up and met Ethan's eyes filled with such tenderness. He had smiled and lifted the ring toward me. It's fate, Chloe. Marry me. At that moment, I truly believed I was the happiest woman in the world. Now, that very ring hit Ethan squarely on the forehead. Thankfully, it missed his eye, only leaving a thin bloody scratch above his eyelid. As he stood there, stunned and at a loss, I finally spoke, the words heavy, calm, and firm. This is my line to say. Ethan Carter, the wedding is canceled. We're breaking up. I walked away from the wedding venue without looking back. On my way out, I messaged the person who had previously offered me the opportunity to study abroad in Milan. In the past, Ethan had always been reluctant to let me leave his side. There was even a time when I went on a business trip to another province for just 3 days, and he flew out the very next day to join me. That night, as he hugged me from behind, he had whispered, "Chloe, please never leave me." I actually knew why. Ethan's mother had always been busy with work, flying across the world. Even on the day she and his father divorced, she had only rushed back to see Ethan for a brief moment, then left again without so much as a pause. Ethan Carter was afraid I would abandon him too, just like everyone else. I had lost my mother at a young age, and foolishly believed that Ethan and I were two souls bonded by shared sorrow. Because of that belief, I clung to him even tighter, refusing countless career advancement opportunities along the way. Even my Italian female boss once expressed her regret. "You shouldn't let marriage hold you back, Chloe. Marriage is only a small part of your life. If he becomes an obstacle to you becoming a better version of yourself, then you should let him go without hesitation." She encouraged me to cherish the opportunity the company offered to study in Milan. "Chloe, you're not some delicate flower meant for a greenhouse. You're a bird meant to soar high." Though her Chinese was broken, her words planted the final determination in my heart. I booked a ticket for 3 days later, on the very day my wedding was originally scheduled. I thought Ethan would, at the very least, have enough tacit understanding with me to silently accept that our relationship was over. But I didn't expect that. Just as I was dragging my suitcase out the door, I would run straight into Ethan, drunk, being supported by Lily. In Lily's smug smile, there was a faint hint of resentment, a hatred that I had stolen the man she loved. At first, I had never seen her as a threat. Just as Ethan had said, she was 5 years younger than us. When Ethan and I were already dating in college, she was still in middle school. When Lily found out Ethan had a girlfriend, she flew across the country by herself and cried hysterically at the door of Ethan's dorm, demanding that he break up with me and be with her instead. Ethan had only been helpless. "Kid, do you even know what love is?" Through tears, Lily had choked out, I know. I just like you. I'll always, always like you." Before she left, she glared at me with red eyes and said viciously, "Just you wait." I had only laughed it off, thinking it was nothing serious. I never expected that Lily would work so hard, pushing herself to get into the same university as Ethan and me. The day she received her admission letter, she posted on her social media, "I felt the breeze you felt. Does that mean we've embraced?" Alarmed, I warned Ethan to keep his distance from her. But Ethan only smiled and said, "She's just a kid. Probably just posting some cringy lines she found online. It's not serious." But later, Lily joined Ethan's company as an intern, getting closer and closer to him, even going on business trips together. I wasn't silent about it. We argued more than once, yet every time Ethan looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "Lily's just a kid I watched grow up. What could possibly happen between us? Are you insulting her or are you insulting me?" Now that so-called kid was standing there, giving me a taunting look. "Sorry," Lily said, "but Ethan spent last night with me." She tugged at the collar of her light clothing, revealing the unmistakable red marks on her neck. I raised my eyebrows. Wow, what a service. Not only did the mistress get her way, she's even offering the original fiancé a free live show. Nice. I should record it and send it to your entire company. Let them all have a look. Clearly, Lily hadn't expected that kind of reaction from me. Her expression twisted, caught between rage and panic. She started screaming, "I met Ethan first. He was supposed to be with me. If you want to talk about who came first, you're the real mistress, you bitch." Lily launched herself at me, clearly determined to settle the grudge from the wedding rehearsal. She tried to slap me, but I easily dodged. This time, I wasn't about to let her off easily. I grabbed her hair and raised my hand, ready to strike back. But suddenly, a strong hand clamped down on my wrist, stopping me from landing the slap. The grip was so tight it hurt. In the next instant, I was yanked backward violently. I stumbled, my palms scraping against some clutter on the ground, leaving a clear, bloody cut. The sharp pain made my breath hitch. "Chloe, have you caused enough trouble yet?" It was Ethan, who had finally woken up from the sofa, and the first thing he did upon waking was accuse me. He shielded Lily behind him, his face cold as ice. "If you dare touch Lily again, I swear, I'm warning you one last time, apologize to her." I opened my mouth, sucking in a deep breath, terrified that if I didn't, the tears would spill over. The truth was, on the day of the wedding rehearsal, after I slammed the door and left, Ethan had chased after me. Chloe, wait, Ethan said. Let's make this clear. But before he could finish, Lily's desperate voice rang out from behind him. Ethan, are you really gonna leave me here alone? Are you just going to push me to my death? She stood there on the massive stage, wearing only a thin slip, trembling slightly, like a flower battered by storm and rain. Ethan hesitated, trying to hold on to my hand, but after a few futile struggles, he let go. He took off his white tuxedo jacket and rushed toward her. In the corner where he couldn't see, Lily, looking frail and weak, suddenly shot me a sharp, triumphant smile. She mouthed the words, "I won." I pushed open the door and walked alone into the summer rain. In the sudden downpour, I could no longer tell whether the wetness streaming down my face was rain or tears. I had tried so hard not to cry, desperately clinging to my last shred of dignity. But at that moment, the tears slipped uncontrollably from my eyes. I raised my blood-smeared hand and in one furious motion swung it toward Ethan's stunned face. I shoved at them both, again and again, forcing them away from me. "Get out, all of you, I don't want to see any of you." Finally, Ethan let go of Lily and hurried toward me. He lowered his head to check my hand, his face full of concern. "How could you get hurt and not even tell me?" He quickly found some ointment and gently applied it to my wounded palm. Then he pointed at the takeout box he had just brought back and said, "Try it. It's your favorite seafood congee. I tried so many times but could never get the same taste as the shop owner back at our university town. Wife, tell me, what's the secret ingredient?" But it was never about the congee. It was about that little shop in our university town, the place where I had first met Ethan, the place where I had believed our happiness would begin. I pulled my hand away. "I don't need you pretending anymore. Stay away from me." Ethan ignored my rejection. He pulled me into his arms forcefully, his voice as gentle as ever. "Chloe, I understand. You love me and I love you. You're just too emotional because you love me so much. It's okay. If you want, I'll keep my distance from Lily from now on. We'll still go ahead with the wedding." I was exhausted, but I summoned my last bit of strength to push Ethan away. "I told you," I said. "The wedding is canceled. We're breaking up." Ethan's face darkened. "All right, Chloe, stop talking nonsense. The invitations have all been sent out. If you cancel now, what will our friends, our coworkers, our families think of us?" His voice dropped lower, taking on a coaxing tone. "You've always wanted to build a home with me, haven't you? Your mother would be so happy for you if she could see you now." He was betting on my longing for a family, betting that I would be too soft to walk away. He still didn't believe I would really cancel the wedding. I thought about my suitcase, soaked through by the summer rain. I thought about the wedding dress, probably ruined beyond saving. The absurdity of it all nearly made me laugh aloud. I looked up at Ethan's unfamiliar face. "Yes," I said, "the wedding must go on." After all, I really had wanted a wedding. Ethan's face lit up with joy. "I knew it, Chloe. I knew you'd come around. There's never been anything between me and Lily. We're getting married and we'll be happy." I stared into his eyes and slowly said, "But I have one condition. I want you to stay away from Lily for the next 3 days." Ethan agreed without hesitation. "Okay," he said with a smile. "That's it? That's all you want?" "Yes," I replied softly. "That's all." But deep down, I knew he would never be able to do it. Over the next 3 days, Ethan treated me with an almost frantic devotion. Whatever I asked for, he fulfilled without hesitation. He even bought the wedding dress I had liked so much at an extravagant price. He picked me up, twirling me lightly in the gown, his face glowing with happiness. "Chloe, you're really going to marry me." I smiled faintly but said nothing. Instead, I buried myself in work, wrapping up the company handover, packing my belongings, and preparing to ship them abroad. There were endless matters to handle, learning the language, securing accommodations, and I barely had time to breathe. Until the day Lily invited me to meet at a cafe. Her eyes were red with fury. "You still want to go through with the wedding? Have you no shame? He's already had a wedding with me, and you still dream of stealing him away? You bitch. How can you be so shameless?" I couldn't be bothered to argue with her. I simply picked up the iced Americano on the table and dumped it all over Lily. Then I completed the slap that Ethan had interrupted the other day. Being a homewrecker this brazen, I have to admit, it's refreshingly original. I shook my head, feigning pity. Too bad, I said. Even after you've thrown yourself at him like this, Ethan Carter still doesn't want you. He's preparing to marry me. Doesn't that just piss you off? Ethan prepared a new wedding dress and a new diamond ring for me. Look at you. After all your scheming and crying, the things you bled yourself dry trying to steal, I got them twice over without lifting a finger. Lily was stunned by the slap, a clear 5-finger mark burning red on her face. She glared up at me with hatred. Chloe, you bitch, you'll die a horrible death. I looked down at her from above, smiling coldly at the pitiful wreck she had become. Without another word, I pushed open the door and left. I returned to the company to complete the final handover procedures. Some colleagues had already heard whispers of what had happened. They came over to hug me and wish me luck. Chloe, it's okay, they said. It's better to find out before the wedding. You have a much brighter future ahead. I smiled and said, thanks, I'll take your blessings. The night before the wedding, Ethan personally cooked a table full of my favorite dishes. Chloe, I've thought it through. I was wrong too about what happened before. Trust me, after we get married, I'll love you twice as much. I won't let you regret marrying me. The candlelit dinner was beautifully set. The atmosphere was perfect. But then Ethan received a phone call, and the smile on his face froze. Chloe, it's Lily. Something happened to her. She got cornered by some thugs in an alley on her way home from work. She's in serious danger. Under the dim candlelight, which rippled like waves across the table, Ethan looked at me silently. I said nothing, only bowed my head and continued eating slowly. Finally, Ethan gritted his teeth. Chloe, you're a woman. Lily's a woman too. You've always prided yourself on standing up for women's rights. Are you really happy now that something bad happened to her? You weren't like this before. You weren't this cruel. I looked up at Ethan's furious, frustrated face and chuckled softly. Why are you so anxious? I said. It's not like I'm stopping you from going. It was as if he had been granted a royal pardon. He didn't even bother putting on a jacket. He rushed out the door in a frenzy. Chloe, wait for me. I'll be back soon. Before the candles finished burning out, I finished my meal, wiped my mouth, picked up my already packed luggage from the bedroom, and took a cab to the airport. Destination, Milan, Italy. When Ethan woke up the next morning, he was a little dazed. Standing at the sink, he caught sight of the angry red scratch across his face in the mirror, and chuckled. Chloe, when did your nails get so long? But then he noticed something. The pink toothbrush on the sink was gone. A jolt of panic shot through him. This wasn't his home. It wasn't Chloe's home either. Last night's girl had been Lily, and today was supposed to be his wedding day. Almost tripping over himself, Ethan rushed to put on his tuxedo. He sped through the rain-slicked summer streets, nearly causing a car accident. The driver from the opposite lane cursed at him through the window. Where are you rushing to? Your own funeral. Ethan didn't even hear him. He had only one thought in his mind. He had to get to the wedding. He had to see Chloe. He had to marry her today. This was the moment he had dreamed of for 5 long years. The truth was, after saving Lily from the alley last night, he had intended to go straight back to Chloe. But Lily's white dress had been soaked through by the rain, clinging to every curve of her body. She had begged him to send her home. She had offered him a drink. The summer night was hot and humid after the rain. Sitting on the sofa, watching the girl he had known since she was a child now grown and clad in barely anything, Ethan had felt a sudden wave of heat he couldn't explain. For the first time he realized, Lily was no longer that snot-nosed kid chasing after him. She had already grown up. She pressed her delicate face against the back of his hand, sobbing. Ethan, please, don't treat me like this. You know I love you. I've loved you so hard for so many years. Damn it. Ethan slammed his fist hard against the steering wheel. He shouldn't have been so careless. What was he doing to Chloe? But very quickly, another thought slipped into his mind. Relief. Fortunately, Chloe still didn't know. Fortunately, today, they were getting married. When Ethan finally rushed to the hotel, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. The atmosphere was odd. Hardly anyone had come. Jason hurried over, panic all over his face. Good God, why wasn't your phone working? Listen to me, Chloe. But Ethan didn't even wait for Jason to finish. He couldn't wait another second. He sprinted toward the girl standing on stage in a wedding dress. "Chloe," he called. But when the girl turned around, it was Lily. The heart that had been pounding wildly in his chest since morning came to an abrupt stop. The smile he had forced onto his face froze inch by inch. "Why? Why are you here?" Lily stood there in a wedding dress, holding a bouquet. She hadn't even bothered to cover the obvious red marks on her body with makeup. She beamed as she ran into Ethan's arms. "I'm here to marry you." Before Ethan could react, the hotel's giant screen suddenly lit up. The officiant, still holding the USB drive in his hand, had plugged it into the system. The slideshow began playing automatically, but it wasn't the sweet photos of Ethan and Chloe. It was evidence of Ethan's affair with Lily. The room erupted into chaos. All of Ethan's friends, colleagues, and relatives who had gathered to witness a love story he had always proudly flaunted were now staring in horror at the disgraceful entanglement between a man and a much younger girl. Ethan felt as if something inside him had completely collapsed. The noise, the stares, the shame, it was overwhelming. He staggered forward and grabbed Jason with trembling hands. "Where's Chloe? You went to pick her up, didn't you? Where is she?" Jason looked like he was about to cry. "I went to her place today. Nobody was there. After asking around, I found out 3 days ago she already told all her family and friends that the wedding was canceled." Ethan felt the world spinning around him. He couldn't even stand without Jason's support. 3 days ago. She decided 3 days ago to leave me. The moment I landed in Milan, I took a cab to the accommodation arranged by the company. On the way, it started to rain. Under the rain, Milan lost its sharp glamour. Raindrops streaked across the Gothic spires and Baroque domes, soaking the fashion capital in a misty, poetic melancholy. When I got out of the car at the company, the rain suddenly stopped. A rainbow stretched across the sky, arching over the bustling city streets. The cab driver took my money, smiling as he said in Italian, "Dopo la pioggia viene l'arcobaleno." After the rain, there's always a rainbow. Following the company's arrangements, I quickly plunged myself into study. I barely had time to breathe. I was like a sponge, greedily absorbing knowledge, pouring all my energy into new ideas. Days and nights blurred together at the studio. But now I had learned to set alarms, to order takeout, and to sit with my Italian colleagues, eating pizza, laughing when they joked, whoever invented pineapple pizza should be executed. I never thought I would see Ethan Carter again. One day, a colleague pointed toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Chloe, do you know that handsome guy?" Outside, a man stood there, an expensive suit hanging awkwardly on his body, his tie loose around his neck, his eyes sunken, tired, shadowed by the long lashes. He hadn't shaved in days, and despite his handsome features, he looked utterly wrecked. He was holding an insulated food container, and when he saw me glance his way, he instinctively took a step forward, then stopped himself, just standing there, staring at me longingly, as if hoping I would soften and come out to meet him. I withdrew my gaze, shook my head at my colleague, and said, "No, I don't know him." Not long after I arrived in Milan, I received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. I had changed my number when I moved abroad, and only close friends knew my new contact. It was the dry, hot Milanese summer, but the nighttime breeze sweeping across the terrace was strong. I answered the call. Ethan's voice came through, hoarse and pleading. "Chloe, please, don't hang up. I miss you so much." He struggled to steady his breathing. I know you asked for compensation for the wedding dress. I'll send it." There was a pause, followed by a bitter laugh. "Compensation? That's all you left me with, a bill for the wedding dress. Chloe, do you really have no heart? What about our 5 years together? Had everything we shared for 5 years really been so easily tossed aside?" In the cool Milanese night breeze, I poured myself a glass of wine, stretched out on the terrace sofa, and thought, well, it's still better than watching our 5 years get thrown into Lily's bed. Lily was still just a young girl. On social media, she was half an emotional influencer, documenting her entire journey of chasing after brother Ethan online, accumulating quite a following. A lot of the material for the scandalous slideshow at the wedding had come straight from her posts. Not long ago, that online story had come to a so-called conclusion. Lily posted a photo of herself in bed, the man beside her barely visible, except for a faint, unmistakable scratch above his eyelid, the same mark left when I threw my engagement ring at Ethan during the wedding rehearsal. Even though I had mentally prepared myself for this moment, seeing the photos still made me so nauseous I almost threw up. Ethan's voice suddenly grew urgent over the phone. "I can explain. It was Lily. She drugged me. Chloe, I swear, I never meant to betray you. The only person I've ever loved is you. I always treated Lily like a little sister. Things blew up too much. She got expelled from school. Her parents have taken her back home and put her under strict supervision." At that point, Ethan's voice seemed to tremble, as if, even across oceans, I could still hear his pain loud and clear. He had never lowered himself like this before. "Chloe, please come back. Don't just sentence me to death like this. We still have so many promises we haven't fulfilled. I promised your mother I would make you happy. Chloe, believe me, I really love you." I couldn't help but let out a short, mocking laugh. Maybe that laugh was too obvious, because Ethan's voice cracked, filled with disbelief. "Bookmark back." "Chloe, why are you laughing?" I lowered my head, took a sip of wine, and said quietly, "Ethan, drop the act. You only make me feel sick." After hanging up, I blocked his number. But Ethan didn't give up. He kept sending me gifts, expensive items like the season's latest haute couture, including a white dress that perfectly matched my aesthetic and looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. He even had food delivered across countries, new dishes from my favorite restaurants back home. I refused every single delivery. The courier company grew frustrated, unsure what to do with the expensive or perishable items being rejected. I was fed up. I sent Ethan a text asking him to stop bothering me, but I never imagined he would go so far, leaving his company behind, crossing oceans, and standing downstairs at my office with a bouquet of red roses. My co-workers whispered among themselves, wondering who the heartbroken-looking East Asian man could be waiting for. I stood by the window, watching Ethan from a distance. I had thought that seeing him again would bring back pain, resentment, regret, but all I felt was an overwhelming calm. That chapter of my life was over. My new life had already begun. As Ethan stared at me as if willing me to come down, the building's security team politely asked him to leave, but he refused, resorting to the same methods he used when he first courted me, sending a bouquet of flowers every day, hoping that I would one day accept one. He even cooked seafood congee himself, carefully delivering it to me in person. "Chloe, please try it," he said, his voice cautious, almost desperate. I begged the shop owner for the secret recipe. It turns out it was a special homemade spice his wife used. Now, the taste should be exactly the one you loved. I had enough. Beyond fed up, I grabbed the container of seafood congee and dumped it over Ethan's head. My voice was colder than he had ever heard it. "I don't love you anymore. Don't make me hate you." The thick congee dripped slowly down from his eyelashes. He stood frozen, his pain almost carving him into stone. "Okay," he whispered. "If that's what you want, I'll accept it." As my career soared, I sought out a master craftsman in Milan to repair the wedding dress my mother had left me. After many pleas, he finally agreed to help. The torn parts were patched with delicate mesh shaped into soaring birds, fluttering as if about to take flight whenever the breeze touched them. Supported by the Global Dampg project, I showcased my designs at Fashion Week, blending Chinese aesthetic philosophy into my work. The show was a sensation, and the dress I wore under the spotlight? It was that very wedding dress. Only, the flowers around the waist had been replaced with birds taking flight. This white dress had been stripped of its association with marriage. It had become a witness to a pivotal moment in my life. That night, my colleagues and I got absolutely drunk, stumbling down the streets in high heels, clutching our bottles of wine. They taught me to sing Italian folk songs, and the tall, blonde, blue-eyed German model who had always posed for me silently walked by my side, occasionally steadying me whenever I almost fell. Everyone else was laughing and teasing, saying I had a boundless future ahead of me. Only he looked into my eyes and said softly in German, "Schön celebricum angecello, you are as free as a bird." I couldn't help but meet his gaze. His eyes were like oceans, deep and beautiful. Even the birds might have paused their flight for a look like that. I smiled, stood on my tiptoes, and kissed his blue eyes. The next morning, I was awakened by someone banging furiously at the door. Still groggy and grumpy, I stumbled to the door, wearing nothing but a camisole slip, and yanked it open. Standing outside, red-eyed, reeking of alcohol, and still wearing a wrinkled suit, was Ethan Carter. I frowned. "What the hell are you doing?" When his bloodshot eyes fell on the marks on my exposed skin, he seemed to lose his mind. He lunged into the apartment, brawling with the naked man in my bed. It took the intervention of the police to finally separate them. I apologized to my new boyfriend, who clung pitifully to my waist, his 6'3" frame curling into my arms. He demanded that I compensate him for the injuries he suffered. I pretended not to notice the fierce glare he shot at Ethan behind my back, but when he kept whining so pitifully, even I had to reach out and comfort him. Finally, Ethan broke down completely. "Chloe, can't you see the injuries I suffered too? What about me?" To be fair, Ethan didn't stand much of a chance against a 6'3" German model who trained daily. Clearly, Ethan had been the one hurt worse. I sent my new boyfriend away first, then turned back to Ethan, frowning with impatience. "Are you done yet? We broke up a long time ago. After this, I'm filing for a restraining order. Stay at least 50 meters away from me." But Ethan refused to accept it. He stepped closer and seized my wrist violently. "I don't agree. I never agreed to break up. As long as I don't agree, we're still together. We were even engaged." The police quickly moved to pull him off me, forcing us apart. I shook off my wrist, my voice cold. "Do you need me to remind you? You slept with Lily the night before our wedding." Ethan's face turned deathly pale. He stammered, "I know I was wrong, Chloe. Everyone makes mistakes. And you've gotten your revenge. Now I know how you must have felt back then. I swear, I'll never do it again." He lowered his head in defeat, 2 heavy drops of water falling onto the floor of my apartment. I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore. Till death do us part? Not for me. Ethan Carter, I would only fly higher and higher. As for you, whether you rotted in the mud or were buried deep underground, it no longer concerned me. I only cared whether you stayed far enough away. After returning home, I quickly rose to a management position in the company. For someone my age, it was considered quite an accomplishment. When I reunited with old friends, the conversations inevitably drifted toward Ethan. They were practically gleeful, eager to gossip. "You have no idea. After you left for Milan, Ethan's company tanked hard. They had to sell it off dirt cheap not long ago. Now he doesn't even dare show up at reunions." I smiled lightly. "Really? And that mistress of his? She got kicked out of school? Her parents had no choice but to force her to take the college entrance exams again. She's already 20, way past her prime. How could she possibly compete with the top students anymore? She repeated her senior year several times, but still couldn't get back into her old university. And your move at the wedding, that presentation you put together? Legendary. Their scandal went viral online for a while, trending all over the short video platforms. Honestly, I doubt either of them will ever find someone decent again." Not long after that, my boss was transferred elsewhere, and I was promoted to take over his position. He smiled and congratulated me warmly.